Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So in this one, I'm going to show you how to set up a holster system so you can attach items to the player, especially in VR. There is going to be three different types. So you can see here the first one is you pick stuff up out the scene and you can attach it to your holsters so you can move around with them. The second one that you're seeing here is going to be you spawn with specific items. So you can choose what the player spawns with, just makes it a little bit easier. And then the third one, which I'll be showing in just a second, is going to be a Robo Recall style system where you spawn with the item, and then once you take it out of your holster, after a certain amount of time, it spawns another one. So in this case, it's a second. Once you remove it, it spawns another straight in its place, essentially. You can see at the top there's some red printing text. That's from the game component or the grab component. I'm not sure how to get rid of that, but if you look at the functions, you'll be able to find that pretty easily. Let's get started. So in this one, just before we start, I'm going to be using the Valve index, but it does work with anything. It's obviously just a VR template. So yeah, let's jump right in. So this template is pretty much the same one. I've just extended it, so don't worry about that too much. I am using a VR pawn which contains a capsule component, which I'm going to attach the holsters to. If you want to know how to do this, there'll be a video in one of the corners and in the description showing how to set it up, which would be probably best to follow first if you need to. But for now, we'll close that and we can jump right in. So first thing we need to do is actually go to our geometry folder in our template. And in meshes, we're actually going to duplicate one of these cubes. We could use one of them, but we'll just be adding information to it for the sake of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1 meter cube and I'm going to just duplicate that. And I'm going to title this SM underscore holster. And this is going to act as our mesh so we can see where we're placing stuff. And we need to open this up. And the first thing we need to do is on the top right, you might see the details panel. We actually want to go to socket manager and we want to add a socket. And I'm just going to call this holster. We'll keep it all uniform. So that's pretty much it for the cube. We can now hit save and we can close this window down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the VR template and I'll look for our blueprints folder. Might as well keep everything organized. So in here, we're going to right click, we're going to go blueprint class, and we're just going to create an actor. And this is going to be called BP underscore holster. And this is going to act as our template. So if we open up our new holster blueprint, dock this window, we can then go to add, and we're going to look for static mesh. We might as well rename this holster, or holster mesh. And then in here on the right, we can set our static mesh to be our new holster. So SM underscore or just holster. There it is. I spelled it wrong. I put AM instead of SM. So let me just quickly fix that. There we go. Hit compile. So we got our holster, static mesh, and we're going to change the scale of this to about 0.2, just so it's a little bit smaller and we can apply it to our player. In here, just so we know what direction our holster is pointing, I'm also going to add an arrow. And I think for the rotation of this, we actually need to rotate the arrow 90 degrees on our X, or our Z. So it'll be 90. Hit compile and save. And now if we go to our event graph, we can start actually setting up our code. So I'm going to start by just deleting all of these. Hit compile. So we're ready. And select our holster. Now that we actually have our mesh in, we can actually go down on the right and we're going to look for our collision, if I don't scroll past it. In here, what you might need to do is you haven't followed the Half-Life tutorial that I previously uploaded, the one that has the collision for the body. You'll want to set this to overlap all dynamic, but in this case, we're actually going to set it to block all. And then I'm going to set this to custom so I can say overlap anything that has our VR interactable. Like I said, if you followed the last tutorial, this will make sense. But if not, just make sure you have world dynamic physics body set to overlap, and then you should be able to pick them up the exact same way. So now that we have our holster and our collision sorted, what I'm going to do is we're going to scroll down on the right and we're going to look for event begin overlap. We're actually going to use this so once an object hits the cube or the mesh, then it'll fire our code. And from our other actor, we're actually going to look to see if actor has a tag. Actor has tag. And if you have a look in the template, so we have a look around, you'll see that the default content that's already in here, if we select our main component, search tag, has a tag applied to it called interactable. So we're going to use this. So we just copy that and go back to our holster. We can just paste that in there. So we now have a branch. I'm trying to see the keyboard while I do this. So I plug this in there. And the next thing we're going to do is, if the interactable overlapping our holster has the interactable tag, meaning we can pick it up, we're then going to check to see if our holster already has an item. So we're going to do a branch and we're going to create a new condition bool. So I'm going to right click on the pin, promote variable. Yep, and we're just going to say has item. Let's do a small b. So bool has item already. So this pretty much says later on, if we already have an item or this holster has an item already, we won't do anything because we don't want to be able to put multiple objects into the same thing. And after that, we're going to get a reference to the holstered item. So from our other actor, we're going to right click on here, promote a variable, and we're just going to name this holstered, set that to true. Actually, we're going to set that to false. So by default, this bool should be set to false. So on start, do we have an item? No. Okay, we're going to get the object that's overlapping it because we know it has the interactable tag. And then we're going to set this as a reference so we know what item is in it. Now that we actually have a reference to the item that we're holding, and we know it has the tag interactable, by default that'll mean that it has the grab component applied to it. So if we have a look at these, you'll see that we have the grab component snap, grab component inherited. Basically, if it's an interactable, it has a grab component, and that's what we're going to take advantage of here. We're actually going to drag off our reference. I'm going to go get component by class, and what this will do is let us search for that grab component so we can make some changes to it, which we're going to do in a second. And now we actually have our component class, we need to make some changes in our grab component. So if you go to VR template and then blueprints, you'll be able to find that we have our grab component listed here. We're going to open this up, and in here we're going to create a new Boolean variable called isHolstered. B is holstered. And we need to compile so we can make sure that this is set to false. And we need to actually find our try grab function. And in here, we're going to go to the very beginning and we're going to say, when we grab the controller, we're going to set is holstered to false, because obviously if we're holding the weapon, it's not going to be. So we can connect that up to sequence. We will be doing some more in here in a minute, but for now, we want to bounce over to our try release function. And in here, so we're going to get a reference to our is holstered. So we're going to get that. And we're going to say is holstered from true. And then is holstered. We don't actually want to set our component physics. So essentially it'll just stay exactly where it is. So we're going to bypass this node. We move this around so we got a little bit place to work with. We're just going to go from true straight to is held to false. And then if it is false, so if it's not holstered, then we'll act as normal, essentially. And that's pretty much it for this bit. What we now need to do is go to try grab. And in here, we're going to create a new variable. This time it's going to be called holster, and its class is going to be actor. I'm going to go down to actor, object reference, and we're going to drag this in. We're actually going to set this in our holster blueprint as a reference, but what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to check to see if our holster is valid. If we have a holster, we're then going to cast to it, and then we'll be able to tell the holster whether it actually has a weapon. This will act as our check to stop us from being able to put multiple objects into the same place. And to do that, we're going to drag off our holster and we'll search is valid, and we want the one with a question mark. So we're going to plug that into there. And if you remember, in our holster, we have a variable called is holstered or has item. This is what we're going to set here. So back in our grab component, we're going to drag off and we're going to cast to holster. And then from as BP holster, we're going to drag off and we'll set has item. Set this to false. Plug that into there like so. What we're going to do is we're going to connect our is not valid to our sequence. Our cast failed is also going to go to our sequence. And our is valid will go straight to our cast. So we're essentially getting our holster. We're then going to set has item to false because we know we're grabbing the object from it. This will make more sense in a minute. And there is another bit that we've got to do off the end of here in our holster. So at the beginning, we need to actually create a custom event. And we're going to call this can hold. So can hold, maybe a question mark. And we're going to drag off this and we're going to do a delay. And then from our onComponent begin overlap, we're going to do a do once. Because I find that as you grab the object, it doesn't do it very well. It fires multiple times. And we don't want that to happen. We only want it to reset once we take the object out of it. And then even then delay for a second. So put a second in there. So once you remove the object, you've got 1 second before it'll take something else. Otherwise, it'll continue to snap the object while it's overlaid. It's difficult to explain, but you kind of do need this. You can tweak the values how you like. But for now, that's it. And then we're going to go to our grab component. And from here, we're going to activate that can hold right off the end of our has item. And then we're just going to plug that into our sequence as well. So we've got our little section for grabbing objects or our holster. So pretty much no matter what happens, our pickup stuff will always fire. We're just adding some information in the middle of here to say, is the weapon holstered? We'll say no because we're holding it. If we have a holster, which we're going to set in a minute in our holster, which I know is getting confusing, it's a bit back and forth, but it should work. Then we cast to the holster that the weapon was in, and we'll say has item is no, because we've taken it out. And we're just refiring that. So hit compile and save here. So if we press compile, I think we're going to get a warning. That's probably because we didn't compile the blueprint after adding it. So hit compile, go back to it, hit compile, there it is. We've got it back in, hook all that up, which is exactly what we want. Now we're back in our holster, we can actually set those variables that we just created in our grab component. So the first one was our bool called is holstered. So we drag off is holstered. We'll do a set, plug that into our holster, and we're going to set that to true because we are holstering the item. And then after that, we're going to set our holster. So set holster. And this is going to be our self because it's the actor that we've got. And we can now set the actor's location actually. So we can drag off here and do set actor location. And we'll come back to this in a second. And from our set actor location, we want to attach actor to actor. And if you remember, our socket name is holster. So, and now we can get our holstered item. And now we can get our holstered item as our reference. So we get, I'm going to plug that into our target. And I'm going to double click on here just to make it a little bit more organized. And from our parent actor, we want to do self. We're going to attach it to ourself. And we want to change our location rule to snap to target. And then snap to target as well for our rotation. And everything else we can leave as it is. But for our actual location, we want to get our holster. So it's going to be our mesh. And we're going to do get world location. And we're just going to connect that to our new location. And then set our teleport to true. And now we just need to say has item, set to true. So once it overlaps, it will set to true. And then we can test this. So I'm going to go to my VR template, find our blueprint for our VR pawn, and actually add a child component. So add child actor. And this is going to be our holster. So let's call it holster. And then on our child actor class, we can search for holster again. And now if we go to viewport, we have a holster which can go down to our side. And then I'm just going to duplicate this as holster 01, so it'll go to the other side. And let's rotate it around so those arrows go out. They are probably going to be pointing the wrong way, but it should work for fine for now. So now if we go to VR preview, and I make this full screen, put the headset on, and we have our holsters to our sides, and then I can stick our weapons in. Then if we jump in, we can actually attach our objects to our spawn points or our holsters. So when I run and move around, they actually follow us. Let's go up here. I can then grab them and they still all work. And we can actually not put more than one object inside our grab components. So let's send that one over there. Oh, as so. But what happens if we want to start with one of these spawned actors? And now that we have it so we can actually pick stuff up, attach it to ourselves, and then grab it again. Basically, a normal holster. What happens if we want to do it so when we start the game, we have objects which we can immediately have on our sides. So this is pretty easy. We're actually going to copy and paste quite a bit of the code that we've already made. But to start, we're going to do event begin play. So when we start the game, we're going to spawn our actors. And to do this, we're just going to drag off and do spawn actor from class. And we're going to create a class variable. We're going to right click on our pin and we'll promote a variable. And we're going to call this actor to spawn. Let's just fix all of those. So actor to spawn. So we've got an option to choose, and we're going to make sure this is public so we can access it inside of our VR pawn. For our spawn transform, I'm going to right click and split the struct, because in the template, unfortunately, the actors are actually scaled differently. So if we remove our tag and we have a look at our transform, you'll see that by default they're half the size, so 0.5, and then our cube is 0.3. So unfortunately, spawning these at scale 1 isn't going to be too good. So we're going to set this up so we can manually choose what scale to spawn objects in. Spawn transform location and spawn transform rotation are going to be set to 0. But for our spawn transform scale, we're going to right click, promote to variable again, and we're going to set actor scale. Or we'll do actor spawn scale. And then we're going to check to see if our return value is valid. It's basically saying if we have something, then we want to go on with it. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually going to copy a section of our code from above. So we're going to take our branch, do the entire thing up to our set holster and target, and then do Control W, move our mouse down. We can duplicate that to the bottom. And we say if our return value is valid, then we're going to copy through all of this and the same thing. But from this one, we actually need to fire our try grab from our component. And then set that to there. And then all we can do is copy our last lot of content and plug that in like so. Hit compile and save. And before I forget, we're going to set our actor spawn scale to public. So if we hit compile and save, with that lot of code now, we can go to our VR pawn and select our holster. And in here, if you go down to child actor template, you can do drop down, go to default, and we can set the actor to spawn. So let's just do pistol on our left, I believe. Scale will be 0.5. And then for our holster 1, we'll do cube. So grabbable small cube. And I think this is set to 0.3 by default. We'll just double check. So cube's 0.3, weapon is 0.5. So now when we actually start, because we've set these up, then we should press play. When we start and we look down, We got our cube and our gun, but they've fallen to the floor. So let's check to see what's going on here. As you can see, we've got some errors. So let's jump over to our holster. And I realize it's not working because our holstered item set is not actually getting our spawned actor. So we make sure that's connected. And then if we have a look now, we can see we've got one object or a gun on the right. And then I can't remember what we put on the left. Possibly a cube, and it's just inside. So now we've connected this. I did make my cube smaller just so we'd see it, because I realized that the scale was messing up a little bit. But our grab component and our VR pawn is all set up, so we've got our holster normal one spawning our pistol, and then our holster 2 spawning our small cube. So we hit save and then jump on the template. We can actually drop in and spawn. And you see that we've got our cube on the left, which is good. And then we snap that back in. If we take our controller right, we've got our gun, which we can still use. And then holster back in. Swap these out, which is exactly what we're after. So we've got start with a weapon or items. And then we've also got it so we can choose which items we want and which ones we don't. So while actually working on the tutorial, you guys in the Discord asked me whether it's possible to spawn items. So every time I grab one out the holder, it spawns a new one. A bit like Robo Recall style. It's entirely possible. We can do that quickly by going to our holster. And then at the beginning here, we're going to add some more code. So we're going to right click and we're going to create a custom event. Spawn item after grab. Yeah, let's do spawn item after grab. And then from here, we're going to drag off. We're going to do a branch. And we're going to create a Boolean by right-clicking promote. And we're going to call this continually spawn actor. Excellent. So by default, we want this set to false. So we hit compile, we'll double check that, make sure it's false. We will then delay for 1 second. So after you take it out, after a second, it will spawn a new one. And then we can use the has item as another check. So we'll get branch has item. If we don't have an item, we just spawn another one and we repeat the process. So like so, hit compile and save. And now if we go to our VR pawn and select our holsters, both of them, we can go to default and we'll set continuously spawn actor. Hit compile and save. And before we do this, we need to fire. So we go to holster, we need to fire our spawn item after grab. And we're going to do that in our grab component. And we're going to go to try grab. And we're just going to add it onto the end of here. So we're going to drag off our as BP holster and we'll search spawn item after grab. Connect that like so. Hit compile and save. And now if we go in, we'll get our gun on the right and our cube on the left. And now once we grab our cube, we'll wait a second, it spawns another one. Oh, going from a distance. And then we've got that one. And then we've got the same thing for our gun on our right. So hopefully this helped you all out. If you do want access to this template or like the GDXR custom VR template, then you can do that by heading over to Patreon, which is linked in the description below. And you'll be able to download this file project there. So it'll already have the grab stuff and run from a distance, the smooth locomotion, teleportation, everything you kind of want from this. But hopefully that helped. If you want to support what we're doing on the channel, then please head over to Patreon or even the Discord. It helps a lot. But for now, that's pretty much it. And thank you to everyone who's a Patreon. Their names will be listed here now. So awesome. If you've got any questions and you want to know more, then please head over to the Discord. I'll be able to help you with that. And yeah, enjoy.